The cursor hovered over the submit button for exactly 47 seconds. I counted. 47 seconds of my son's life that he'll never get back. 47 seconds where I could have stopped him. Could have reached over, grabbed the mouse, and undone 18 years of sacrifice with a single click of my own. I didn't. I watched him press confirm on the Community College of Metrotech's acceptance form, a school whose average SAT score hovered somewhere around, "Did you graduate high school?" And I felt something inside me crack. Crack. Like ice on a frozen lake when you're not quite sure if it'll hold your weight. My son, Thomas Bennett Jr., had just taken a 650 on his SATs .650, the kind of score that makes admissions counselors at Ivy League schools sit up straighter in their chairs. The kind of score that opens doors to scholarships, internships, and networks worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And he just used it to apply to a 2-year community college that shares its parking lot with a strip mall and a check-cashing store. "This is your life now," I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat. "No tremor. No tears. Not even a quiver." He spun around in his desk chair, that smug grin plastered across his face, the same grin I'd seen on his father's face 1,000 times before. "Yeah, Mom, it is." He was waiting for me to break. I could see it in the way his eyes darted to my hands, checking if they were shaking. In the way he leaned back, arms crossed, like he'd just delivered the winning blow in a boxing match he'd been training for his whole life. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked into the kitchen. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic potatoes hung in the air. The dinner I'd spent 3 hours preparing, his favorites, every single one. The meal I'd been planning since he got his SAT scores back when I still believed he'd choose Harvard or Yale or even just somewhere with a real quad and ivy on the walls. "You're not even going to Yale?" He followed me, practically vibrating with the need for a reaction. "You're just going to what?" "Cook dinner like everything's normal. Like I didn't just destroy your precious plans." I pulled open the oven and checked on the chicken. Perfect golden brown. The potatoes were crispy on the outside, fluffy on the inside. A labor of love that now felt more like an epitaph. "I'm not going to yell, Thomas." I said it calmly, like I was discussing the weather. "I'm going to plate this meal, and you're going to have a choice. You can sit down and eat with me, or you can leave. Either way, dinner will be served." "Oh, I'll eat." His voice dripped with contempt. "I'll definitely eat. But first," he walked past me to the kitchen table, where the carefully arranged place settings waited, and my grandmother's china. The good silver. Even the cloth napkins I'd ironed this morning, a little detail I'd hoped would make the evening feel special. He picked up his plate, the one I'd hand-painted in a pottery class 5 years ago, a Christmas present I'd spent weeks on, and held it over the trash can. "Mom, I want you to know something." His voice had shifted into something slower, more deliberate, like he'd rehearsed this. "This isn't random. This isn't me being a stupid kid who made a mistake. I thought about this. Did I plan this? The SATs, the applications, the whole." He gestured vaguely at the house, at me, at everything. "This entire thing you've built, I'm tearing it all down. Every last brick." I still didn't react. I'd learned that skill a long time ago. When you live with a man who weaponizes your emotions, you learn to keep your face still, your voice level, your heart rate under control. "Dad's getting out next month," he continued. "Did you know that?" He called me. "He's getting early release, and he's got plans. Big plans. He's going to." "I don't care what your father's plans are." I turned back to the oven. "Whatever he told you, whatever promises he made." "Oh, I don't need his promises." Thomas laughed, a harsh sound that didn't belong in my kitchen. "He already paid up. 20,000, Mom. Cash. That's what it cost to get me to do this." I froze. Just for a second. A tiny freeze, barely perceptible, but he saw it. Of course he saw it. He'd been watching for any sign of weakness. "You heard me," he said, his voice rising with excitement. 20,000. He wanted me to destroy your dream for me. And I said, "What's it worth to you, Dad?" And you know what? It was worth a lot. Because he hates you more than he ever loved me. The oven mitts I was holding felt suddenly heavy in my hands. 20,000 to throw away your future, I said quietly. That's what your education was worth to him. "No, Mom." Thomas stepped closer, his voice dropping into something almost intimate. "That's what you were worth to him, 20,000 to break you. And I got that money, but I also got to watch you finally understand how worthless all your sacrifices were, all those extra shifts. All those years you didn't buy yourself anything nice, so I could have tutors, remember? You used to tell me that story about how you gave up your promotion so you could be home when I got back from school." "I remember. And I hated you for it." His voice cracked slightly, and for a second, I saw something else in his eyes. Something wounded. "I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't ask you to give up your career to be a martyr for me. You never even asked what I wanted. You just decided I was your project, and you poured everything into me because you had nothing else. You drove Dad away with it. You turned him into the villain and yourself into the hero, and I got stuck in the middle." "Thomas." "No, you don't get to talk." He was pacing now, his sneakers squeaking against the kitchen tile. "You don't get to explain, Dio, you know how many times I heard you say, 'I gave up everything for you?' Like that was supposed to make me feel grateful. Instead, it made me feel trapped. Every time you told me that story, I heard you say, 'I'm the reason your life is small, and I'm the reason you're not happy. I owe you something because you gave up something you never really wanted anyway.'" His words hit harder than I expected. Because there was truth in them, a sharp, jagged, uncomfortable truth. I had given up my career. I had made him feel like my happiness was tied to his performance. I wanted him to succeed so desperately, so obsessively, that I'd forgotten to let him breathe. But that didn't excuse what he'd just done. "Your father promised you 20,000, I said slowly, "to destroy your own future. And you took it. You're sitting in my kitchen, in my house, eating my food." "Eating your food?" He laughed again. I'm not eating your food. I'm not eating anything you've touched. He walked over to the table where the roasted chicken sat cooling on a platter, the garlic potatoes, the roasted vegetables, the lemon dill sauce I'd made from scratch. This looks disgusting, he announced, picking up the platter. You know what this looks like? It looks like prison food. That's what you cooked for me, Mom. Prison food for a prisoner you kept in your own house. I opened my mouth to respond, but he didn't wait. He walked to the back door, opened it, and I heard the clatter of a plate hitting the pavement. The sound of my carefully crafted meal shattered on concrete. Enjoy your meal, Mom. I stood there in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps retreat. The front door opened and slammed shut, and then there was silence. Just me, the lingering smell of rosemary and something burning, and the sound of my own heartbeat, too loud and too slow. I walked to the back door and looked down at the mess he'd made. The chicken was scattered across the porch steps, the potatoes crushed into the wood. He'd thrown the platter so hard it had cracked in two. $1,000 worth of inheritance from my grandmother's set, broken and useless. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I'd spent so many years crying over Thomas Bennett Sr. that I'd used them all up. There were no tears left for his son. Instead, I went back inside and made myself a cup of tea, Earl Grey, the expensive kind I only bought for special occasions. And I started making a list. Not a mental list, a real one, with pen and paper. $20,000. That's what he paid our son to destroy his own future. The money came from somewhere. Thomas Sr. didn't just have $20,000 lying around. He's getting out of prison next month. Early release. How? And why now? I'd been divorced from Thomas Sr. for 4 years. He'd spent the last 2 of those in federal prison for tax fraud. The same fraud I'd helped him commit back when I was still too scared to say no. When I was still the good wife who kept her mouth shut and her head down. I had made a deal, testified against him in exchange for immunity, walked away with the house and primary custody and a restraining order that was supposed to keep him away from us. But Thomas wasn't the one who'd been sleeping in the guest room when I came home from the courthouse. He wasn't the one who'd listened to me cry at 3 a.m. because I'd ruined my marriage to save myself, and I didn't know how to live with that. The phone rang. I checked the caller ID. Kimberly Thompson, my real estate agent. Kimberly, I answered. How's the offer on the Willow Street property? Just got the paperwork back, she said. It's a little lower than we wanted, but I think with the right counteroffer, we can... Take it. A pause. Kimberly, are you sure? This is below. I'm sure. Close it. I need the cash. There's also a showing at the Oak Street house this afternoon. They want to see it by. Show it. I'll sign whatever you need. Just get it done. She could sense something was wrong. I'd been working with her for 2 years, buying and flipping properties across the city. She knew my rhythms, my hesitations, my careful way of doing business. Kimberly, she said softly, are you okay? Ai fine. I almost believed it. I just need to liquidate some assets. It's nothing personal. All right, I'll call you when I have the signed offers. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the list I'd started. $20,000 wasn't a lot of money to me anymore, not really. Not after the years of quietly buying distressed properties, fixing them up and selling them for more. Not after the investments I'd made with the settlement money from my divorce. Not after all the years of living small, sacrificing, giving up my career while I quietly built an empire in my spare time. That was the part Thomas didn't know, the part nobody knew. The mother who'd given up everything for her son was also the owner of 14 rental properties across 3 states. The woman who hadn't bought new clothes in 2 years had a net worth in the low 7 figures. The sacrificial parent who'd let her career go to raise her child had been quietly managing a real estate portfolio that doubled every 18 months. Why? Because I learned the hard way that you never show your hand. Not to your husband, not to your son, not to anyone. You let them think you're weak. Let them think you're desperate. Let them underestimate you. And keep building in the shadows. I'd learned that lesson the day I walked into the courtroom to testify against Thomas Sr., and he looked at me with those pale gray eyes and said, "You think this is the end? You think I'm done?" No, Thomas Sr., I didn't think you were done. That's why I'd been preparing for your return for 3 years. And if you thought a $20,000 bribe to our son would break me, you really didn't know me at all. That evening, I sat down at my computer and pulled up the bank records I'd been collecting, the ones that didn't show up on my normal statements. The accounts I'd opened in other names through other entities, using a labyrinth of shell corporations that I'd set up years ago, back when I'd still been trying to protect myself from Thomas Sr. As creditors. I had a lot of secrets, but my son knew none of them. That was about to change. 2 days later, Thomas came back to the house. He didn't call ahead. He just showed up, let himself in with the key I'd never thought to take back, and walked into the living room like nothing had happened. "Mom," he said, "I need money." I looked up from the book I was reading, one of the beach reads I allowed myself every few months, a small luxury that had become a ritual. "You need money." "Don't do that," he said, his voice rising. "Don't act like you don't know what I mean. Dad's account got frozen. Something about your lawyers sending paperwork. I can't access the $20,000. I need you to lend me." "I have something for you first." I closed the book and marked my page. "Oh, great. Another life lesson?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "One of your "this is why you need discipline" lectures?" "Not a lecture. Something more useful." I reached into the drawer beside my chair and pulled out a thick manila folder. I'd prepared this last night, carefully assembling every piece of evidence I'd collected. I handed it to him. He opened it suspiciously, scanning the first page, then the second. "What is this?" "Your father's financial records. The ones he didn't want you to see." Thomas's eyes widened. "Where did you get?" "It's called discovery, Thomas. When you sue someone, their financial records become available to your lawyers. Your father's lawyers have been fighting my claim for the money he owes me." That's why his accounts are frozen. He owes me $50,000 in back support and property division. And last month, he transferred $20,000 of his remaining assets to your account, which my lawyers intercepted. He knew it would get frozen. He just wanted you to know it existed before he lost everything. Thomas's face had gone pale. What are you saying? I'm saying your father is running out of money. He's in debt. His business is a shell, and the $20,000 he gave you was the last real cash he has. He knew the moment you spent it, the moment you tried to access it, my lawyers would freeze it. He was never trying to give you money. He was trying to make you an accomplice. No. Thomas shook his head violently. No, that's not true. Dad wouldn't. Read the rest of the folder. Thomas sat down heavily on the couch. Flipping through pages, I watched him process it all. The credit card statements, the bank accounts, the eviction notices from his father's commercial property. The liens and judgments. His father's company had been running on borrowed time, with borrowed money for years, even before prison. Thomas Sr. had been teetering on the edge of insolvency, so I decided to protect myself. And now he was making a last-ditch effort to drag our son down with him. This can't be right. Thomas's voice had gone high and thin. He told me he was getting out next month. He said he had a plan. He said. I know what he said. I kept my voice level. He wants you to hate me as, oh, he told you things that weren't true. And when you did what he wanted, he'd have kept your resentment fresh and your loyalty high. You were his insurance policy. Thomas, his way back in. Thomas stared at the papers, shaking his head. But he said he loved me. He said he wanted to give me freedom. He told you what you wanted to hear, and he gave you $20,000 he knew you'd never see. Thomas's face crumpled. He looked younger than he was suddenly, like a child again, and I had to resist the urge to comfort him. This doesn't change what you did, I said. But I think it's important you know what you threw everything away for. He looked up at me, his eyes wet. Everything? Mom, I threw away. Your future, your potential, your relationship with the only parent who showed up for your school plays. The one who cooked meals and paid your tutors and told you every single day that you were brilliant. He started to speak, but I cut him off. Don't apologize, don't explain that I know you didn't decide this overnight. IT was coming for years, so I pushed you. I overscheduled you. I stopped myself breathing deep. But I didn't bribe you to hurt yourself. I never tried to win you by destroying you. Thomas was crying now, silently, the pages of the folder trembling in his hands. Mom, he whispered, I'm sorry. I sat there, watching my son unravel. And for the first time, I didn't feel the pull to fix it. It's too late for sorry, I said. But it's not too late to know the truth. And I think you should talk to your father and hear it from him. Thomas looked up, his face wet with tears. Talk to him? How? His line is disconnected. His lawyer's office isn't returning my calls. I don't even know how to reach him. He's getting out next week, isn't he? According to his own letter. Thomas nodded. Then you can ask him yourself. In person. I stood up, smoothing my blouse. Now get out. I need to pack. Pack. Thomas's voice broke. For what? I'm leaving for a week, I said, walking toward the door. I got property inspections in 3 different states. And when I get back, we'll figure out what's next. But Mom. The door's unlocked. Lock it when you go. I left him sitting there, surrounded by the wreckage of his father's lies, my own heart beating a quiet rhythm in my chest, steady, calm, but far from broken. I'd spent 18 years trying to save my son from his own worst instincts, but the truth was, I'd been saving myself for longer. And the game was just beginning. I was in Seattle when the call came. The apartment building I'd acquired 6 months ago needed a new roof, and I'd flown out to meet with contractors. It was the kind of business trip I'd become accustomed to, routine, efficient, with just enough hotel points to make it feel like a vacation. The phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen, expecting my lawyer or the contractor. Instead, I saw a name I hadn't seen in months. Elena Reed. My sister-in-law, Thomas Sr.'s sister, the only member of his family who'd stayed in touch after the divorce. I answered on the second ring. Elena, this is unexpected. Kimberly, you need to come home. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the tension underneath. He's out. They released him this morning, 3 days early. I closed my eyes, letting the information settle. 3 days early, I repeated. How? Good behavior. He had a hearing, and the parole board approved it. I didn't even know he was eligible until yesterday, and by then it was too late. Too late for what? I didn't ask. I already knew. Too late to warn me. Too late to prepare. I had 3 days of inspections left. A dozen more calls to make. But something in Elena's voice told me to drop everything. Where is he now? I asked. He came straight to my house. He wanted to know if I'd heard from Thomas, your son, and if I knew where you were staying, that I told him I didn't, which is true. A pause. But he said something else. He said he'd already contacted Thomas, that he knew exactly where Thomas was. I felt a chill run down my spine. He can't be near Thomas, I said. He's not supposed to be within 500 feet of either of us. Kimberly, he's out on parole. The restraining order got suspended when he went to prison. It doesn't automatically reactivate when he's released. You'd have to refile. Of course. I should have known. Thomas Sr. had always been good at exploiting the cracks in the system. That was how he'd gotten away with everything for so long. I'll be back tomorrow, I said, already pulling up flight options on my phone. Keep your doors locked. Don't answer if he comes back. I'll handle it. Kimberly, Elena's voice softened. I know you think you can handle everything alone, but you don't have to. I'm still here. Whatever you need. I felt something shift in my chest, a flicker of warmth I hadn't expected. Elena had been my sister-in-law for 20 years, and I'd always kept her at arm's length. She was too close to Thomas Sr. Too loyal to his side of the family, even when she'd watched him abuse me. But she'd also helped me escape all those years ago. She'd given me the name of her lawyer, the one who'd finally gotten me out. "Thank you," I said, and the words felt surprisingly natural. "I'll call you when I'm home." I landed at 10 p.m., took a cab straight from the airport, and arrived at my apartment to find the front door unlocked. I didn't panic. I didn't freeze. I just put my bags down slowly, pulled out my phone, and typed a quick message to my lawyer. Then I walked inside. Thomas Sr. was sitting in my living room. He looked older, thinner. His hair had gone salt and pepper in a way that made him look distinguished rather than defeated, and he was wearing a new leather jacket that probably cost more than my last 3 property inspections combined. "Kimberly," he said, standing up. "You're home earlier than I expected." I noticed he didn't ask me to come in, didn't apologize for breaking into my apartment. He just stood there, smiling that lazy smile that used to make my stomach turn. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Technically, the order expired." He shrugged. "I looked it up. You'd have to refile, and since I haven't actually done anything illegal yet. Breaking and entering is illegal." "I have a key." He held it up, the spare I'd kept in the hallway cabinet, the one Thomas had told me he lost 3 years ago. "Thomas gave it to me. Didn't he tell you?" Of course he didn't. Thomas had been hiding his father's visits for months. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and turned back to face him. "What do you want, Thomas?" He laughed. That same empty laugh I'd heard so many times before. That's always your first question, isn't it? What do you want? Not how are you? Not why are you here? Just straight to the transaction. Because I know you, and I know the only reason you're here is because you want something. He stepped closer, his hands in his pockets, his eyes scanning the apartment like he was appraising it. "You've done well for yourself. I knew you had some investments, but this," he gestured around the room, "this is nicer than anything you had when we were together. I earned it, on my own, after the divorce." "So you did." He nodded slowly. "I've been following your career. Real estate, right? Some kind of property management." I didn't correct him. Let him think I was just a small-time landlord. That was safer. 20 years of marriage, he continued, and I never knew you had that kind of ambition. I thought you were just... Just what? "Just a mom," he said, spreading his hands like it was obvious. "Just a wife. You never seemed interested in building anything. You never had any dreams of your own. I figured you were just content." I watched him, feeling something strange and cold settle in my stomach. "I had dreams," I said quietly. "I just knew better than to share them with you." His expression flickered, something dark and angry, but he smoothed it over quickly. "You always were good at keeping secrets. That's one thing I never accused you of. Being stupid. You knew when to keep your mouth shut. I learned that from you." The words hung between us for a long moment. He was trying to get under my skin, and I wasn't letting him. That was his game. Probe until you found a weakness, then press until the person shattered. I'd shattered once. I didn't plan to do it again. "Let me explain why I'm here," he said finally, settling back into a chair. "I'm trying to do the right thing. Did I know I made mistakes? Did I know I hurt you? I know I wasn't a good husband or even a good father, but I'm different now. Prison changes you." I waited. "Thomas told me about the trust," he said. "The one you set up for him when he was a baby. The one he gets access to when he turns 21. He said you're managing it. But what you didn't tell him is that you're also managing the money I set aside, the NY share of the joint assets, the investments I made, the ones I had to liquidate when we separated. You've been hiding it from him." I blinked. "I don't know what you're talking about." I said, and I meant it. There was no joint trust. There wasn't enough money left to create one. "Exactly. You told him there was nothing, and you pocketed the rest." "That's not." "Don't lie to me, Kimberly." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I have documentation that I have account statements. You and your lawyer set up something called the Bennett Family Trust in 2012, and it's been growing ever since. You used the money from the sale of the house. You used the money from the settlement, and you've been hiding it from our son." I felt the room tilt slightly. I remembered that trust. Thomas had set it up himself, back when we were still married, a way to shelter some of his business income from taxes, but the accounts had been drained before our divorce. I'd seen the bank records. There had been nothing left. Unless Thomas had lied to me then, too. "I don't have access to that trust," I said slowly. "I never did. You were the trustee. You were the only one who could touch it. And you think I'd trust myself with that kind of money?" He laughed again. "I'm a convicted fraudster. Kimberly, I'm the last person who'd be allowed to manage a trust. That's why I put it in your name. Right before the divorce, I transferred everything to you." I stared at him, unable to speak. "I thought you knew." He shook his head with mock sympathy. "I thought you'd been using it this whole time, building your little real estate empire. But you really had no idea, did you? All that money, just sitting there, and you never even checked." "Where is it?" I managed to ask. "Where do you think? I put it in a holding account .1 that my lawyer, who also helped me with the divorce, was managing in your name. You were listed as the beneficiary, and I was the grantor. But when you and I separated, He shrugged. "I made some adjustments, made it so only I could access it, and you never noticed. Which means you've been living off your own earnings this whole time, not even knowing I'd hidden a fortune from you." I felt a surge of emotion, not anger, exactly. Something deeper, more complicated. Something that felt a lot like grief. "I trusted you," I said quietly. "When you said there was nothing left, I trusted you." "You always trusted me," he said, and there was something almost tender in his voice. "That was your problem, Kimberly. You couldn't imagine anyone would lie to you." I sat down across from him, my legs suddenly unsteady. "So, why are you telling me this now?" "Because I want you to help me get access to it." His voice had shifted into a new register, more urgent, more sincere. The accounts are in both our names. You're still listed as a co-signer. If you sign the release forms, I can get the money out that we can split it 50-50. It's more than enough to get me back on my feet, and you can keep doing whatever you're doing without anyone ever knowing where it came from. Split it, I repeated. You want me to help you access money you stole from our son. I didn't steal anything. I just moved it. The trust was set up for him, but it was never meant to be his alone, and IT was intended to support the family. And since you and I are no longer a family, I figure we should each take our half and go our separate ways. And Thomas, our son, what does he get? Nothing. Thomas Sr. smiled without warmth. He already got his inheritance. He got his mother's love, which was apparently worth a lot more than money, and he's 18 now. He can make his own way. I stared at him, feeling the pieces click into place. He'd spent $20,000 on the bribe, knowing it would be frozen, just to drive a wedge between me and our son. He told Thomas the First had a secret trust, just to make him resent me. He'd set this entire plan in motion months ago, and he'd been waiting for the right moment to step in and clean up the pieces. You're a very good manipulator, I said finally. I'll give you that. I'm a survivor, he corrected, and I'm offering you a chance to survive with me. Sign the forms, split the money, and we never have to speak to each other again. Or you can refuse, and I'll take the case to court. I'll argue that you've been mismanaging the trust, that you've been hiding it from Thomas, that you used your position as trustee to defraud your own son. The truth will come out anyway. This way, you get to control the narrative. I sat with that for a moment, the weight of his threat, the sharpness of his smile, the careful way he planned every detail. What makes you think I'd trust you now? I asked. I don't. I just know you're practical, and I know you don't want your son to learn the truth about what you did. What I did? I laughed, the sound surprising me. I didn't do anything, Thomas. You stole from your own son. You hid money from us. You arranged for this whole charade, and you're trying to convince me to be complicit in your scheme. Schemes? He laughed again. I'm not scheming, I'm trying to save myself. And if you think I'm the only one in this family who's ever done something wrong, you're delusional. You lied to Thomas every single day about what kind of man I was. You made him hate me. You turned him against me so thoroughly that he was willing to throw away his own future just to hurt you. I went still. You know, I said slowly, I thought I knew you, I thought I understood the worst you were capable of. But this, I gestured at him, at the apartment, at everything. This is a new low. You'll destroy your own son to get what you want. I'm not destroying him. I'm giving him the truth. He deserves to know what kind of mother he has. I didn't respond. I just watched him, letting the silence stretch between us. I think you should leave, I said finally. You're going to think about it? I'm going to think about how to protect myself and my son, and I'm going to have my lawyer look at whatever paperwork you think you have. Because if you think I'm just going to roll over and sign away everything I've built, you don't know me at all. Thomas Sr. stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. You've got until the end of the week. After that, I'm going to the courts. I'm going to file a motion to have the trust dissolved, and I'm going to make sure every single one of your assets is examined. I'm going to leave you with nothing. And Thomas is going to find out everything I've been hiding from him too. Everything. Everything. His smile was slow and terrible, including the fact that you're not just a small-time landlord, that I know about the companies, that I know about the shell accounts. I've been watching you, Kimberly, and I've been waiting for the right moment. My pulse was steady, but my thoughts were racing. He had leverage, he had information, and he had a plan. But I had something he didn't have. I knew how to wait. Goodbye, Thomas, I said. Close the door on your way out. He walked to the door, turned back, and gave me one last smile. I'm glad to see you've gotten cold, Kimberly. It's a good look on you. Then he left. I stood in the middle of my apartment, listening to the front door click shut, and I let myself breathe for the first time since I'd walked in. He thought he had me cornered. He thought he knew everything. But Thomas Sr. had made a serious mistake. He'd just told me exactly what I'd been missing for the past 4 years. There was money in that trust. Money I'd never known about. Money he'd hidden from me and from Thomas. And now I knew where to look. I didn't sleep that night. I spent it on my laptop, searching through the digital records I'd been collecting for years. The ones I'd never had time to fully examine. The ones I'd assumed were worthless. Thomas Sr. had made a mistake when he'd mentioned that trust. He'd assumed I knew about it, which meant he'd been planning this confrontation for a while. He'd also assumed I'd be too shocked to think clearly, which was true, for the first 5 minutes. But after that, I started thinking. If there was a trust, there would be paperwork. Paperwork that had to exist somewhere in bank records and court filings, in the endless trail of documents that follows money wherever it goes. I found it at 4 a.m. It wasn't a trust in the traditional sense. IT was a limited liability corporation, registered in Delaware, with a name I didn't recognize, Tapestry Holdings, LLC. The address on file was a PO, box in Wilmington, which meant it was probably a shell company, designed to hide ownership. But the tax records were public, and I had access to a professional database through my real estate work. It took me 20 minutes to trace the LLC back to a bank account in the Cayman Islands, and another 10 to find the account holder's name. Thomas Bene Sr. Of course. The account had been opened in 2011, about a year before our divorce. The initial deposit was $350,000, money that should have gone to our joint savings, our mortgage, our son's college fund. He'd been hiding money from me for years. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not betrayal, just confirmation of what I'd always suspected, but never had proof of. He'd been preparing for the divorce before I even knew it was coming. He'd been siphoning money out of our accounts, setting up offshore accounts, building a safety net for himself while I struggled to make ends meet. And then he'd had the audacity to claim I was the one who'd wasted the family money. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. Kimberly, it's 6 in the morning. My lawyer's voice was rough with sleep, but she was already alert. What's going on? I need you to look at something. I sent her the files I'd found. Tell me what you see. There was a long pause on her end. I could hear her opening documents, the soft click of a keyboard. Where did you get these? She asked finally. I found them online. Tax records, public filings. It took some digging, but it's all there. These are very old accounts. Some of them date back to before your divorce. I know. That's why I called. She was quiet for another long moment. Kimberly, this is serious. If these accounts existed during your marriage and they weren't disclosed during the divorce proceedings, that's fraud. Your husband lied to the court. He lied to you. Can I get access to them? Not directly. These accounts are in his name, and they're protected by privacy laws. But if you file a motion to reopen the divorce settlement, the court can compel him to disclose all assets, including these. The problem is... What? The problem is that he's already out of prison. He's a free man. Even if you go after him, he's not going to just hand over the money. He'll fight it, and that fight could drag on for years. I don't care about the money, I said. I care about the leverage. Leverage for what? I took a breath. He came to see me last night. He said he had proof of a trust fund, something he'd set up in both our names, with our son as the beneficiary. He said if I signed a release, we could split it, but I don't think the trust fund is real. I think he's been hiding assets, and he's trying to get me to sign something that would make it look like I was in on it. My lawyer was quiet for a moment. That's a very specific accusation. I know, but it fits. He's been planning this for years. He used our son to hurt me, and now he's trying to use the law to finish the job. Kimberly listened to me very carefully. Her voice had shifted into something more serious. If Thomas Sr. is trying to get you to sign something that could be interpreted as a confession or acknowledgement of misconduct, you cannot do it, even if he threatens you, even if he makes promises. You cannot sign anything. I wasn't planning to. Good. Now, let me dig into this. I have contacts in the Delaware Corporate Registry. I might be able to find out who owns that LLC and whether there's any connection to you or your son. I don't have much time. He gave me a deadline, the end of this week. I'll have something for you by tomorrow. In the meantime, don't talk to him. Don't respond to his calls or messages. If he shows up at your door again, call the police. I will. I hung up and sat with the phone in my hands, staring at the files I'd assembled, the LLC, the accounts. The trail of money that stretched back years, all hidden from me, all carefully orchestrated by a man who'd spent our entire marriage preparing for the moment when he'd need to destroy me. But there's something else niggling at the back of my mind, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, a pattern almost visible, but not quite. Thomas had mentioned a trust fund, but he'd also mentioned my lawyer. He'd said my lawyer knew about it, had helped set it up, was in on the whole thing. But my lawyer was a specialist in family law. She'd worked with me on the divorce, and she'd been the one to help me set up my real estate holdings. But she'd never mentioned anything about a trust fund, not once. Which meant either Thomas was lying, or my lawyer had been keeping secrets too. I didn't want to believe that NY lawyer had been my confidant, my ally, the person who'd helped me escape a broken marriage and rebuild my life. The idea that she'd been hiding something from me felt almost worse than everything Thomas Sr. had done. But I couldn't ignore the possibility. I started looking through my files, searching for anything that mentioned my lawyer in connection with Thomas Sr. I found the divorce papers, the settlement agreements, the correspondence. But nothing about a trust fund. Then I found something else. An email from Thomas Sr. sent 3 months before our divorce was finalized to an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was Kimberly's assets, and the body was a list of properties and investments. Properties and investments that were now mine. I read it twice, trying to understand what I was seeing. He'd been tracking my assets before the divorce was even finalized. He'd known about the house, the investments, the savings accounts I'd been trying to protect. He'd been planning to take it all. And then below that was something even stranger. Another email sent a few days later with the subject line, "She'll never know." I opened it, my hands trembling slightly. Just got word from the lawyer. We're all set. The trust is in her name, but I have all the documents. Once she signs the release, we'll be good to go. The lawyer. My lawyer. I felt my stomach drop. Thomas Sr. had been working with someone in my camp, someone who'd been feeding him information, helping him set up the trust, and keeping him updated on my movements. Someone I trusted. I thought back over the past few years, trying to remember any moment when my lawyer had seemed off, distracted, evasive. There had been a few times when she'd encouraged me to settle quickly, to avoid litigation, to accept deals that weren't quite in my favor. At the time, I'd assumed she was just trying to save me money. Now, I wondered if she'd been trying to protect someone else. I couldn't be sure. Not yet, but I needed to find out. The next day, I called a private investigator I'd worked with before, someone I trusted, someone who wasn't connected to my legal team. "John, I need you to look into someone for me. My lawyer. I need to know if she's been in contact with my ex-husband." There was a pause on the other end. "Kimberly, that's a serious accusation." "I know, but I have evidence that someone in my circle has been feeding him information. I need to know who." "I'll see what I can do. It might take a few days." "I don't have a few days. He's given me a deadline. I need to know before the end of the week." "I'll do my best." I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring at the walls. 18 years of marriage for years of divorce, and he was still finding new ways to destroy me. But he'd made a mistake. He'd given me too much information, enough to start digging, enough to find the truth. And the truth was going to unravel everything he'd built. Later that day, I received a call from my son. "Mom, I need to talk to you." His voice was different, softer, more uncertain. "Can I come over?" I hesitated. I still wasn't ready to forgive him for what he'd done. But the mother in me, the part that would always love him, no matter what, said yes. Okay, I'm home. Come over whenever. Thomas arrived 30 minutes later, looking wrecked. His eyes were red, his clothes rumpled, like he hadn't slept in days. When he walked into my apartment, he didn't make eye contact. Just stood there in the middle of the room, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. Mom, he started, then stopped. I don't know how to say this. Just say it, Thomas. I went to see Dad. His voice was barely above a whisper. After he left, I went to the halfway house where he's staying, and he told me things I didn't want to believe. Like what? He said you've been hiding money from me, that you have a secret trust fund, that you've been using it to build your real estate empire while pretending to be poor. I felt my chest tighten. And you believed him? I didn't know what to believe. You've always been so careful, so secretive about your money. You never told me how much you made or where it came from. You just said you were investing and that I shouldn't worry about it. Because I didn't want to burden you with adult problems. You were a kid, Thomas. You didn't need to know about mortgages and taxes and property management. But I'm not a kid anymore, he said, and his voice broke. I'm an adult, and I'm making terrible decisions because I don't have the information I need to make good ones. I sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. I'm going to tell you the truth, Thomas. All of it, but you need to listen carefully, and you need to stop believing everything your father tells you. He nodded, dropping into the chair across from me. Your father was right about one thing. There was a trust fund. He set it up when you were born, with both our names on it, but when we divorced, he took the money out. He moved it to a different account, in a different country. He hid it from me, from you, from the courts. Thomas's eyes widened. He said you were the one who moved it. He would say that. He's been trying to turn you against me since the day we split. You were his leverage, Thomas, the thing he could use to hurt me. But Thomas shook his head slowly. But he was so convincing. He had paperwork. He had bank records. He showed me emails that looked like they came from you. Because he's very good at making things look real. That's what he does. He's been doing it his whole life. I reached into my bag and pulled out the files I'd assembled last night. I have my own paperwork now. Bank records, tax filings, corporate registrations. Everything I found this morning. I can show you what's real and what's not. Thomas took the files, flipping through them with shaking hands. This is all him? He asked finally, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. All him, the accounts, the transfers, the lies. He's been hiding money for years, Thomas, from me, from you, from the courts. And now he's trying to get me to sign something that makes it look like I wasn't on it. Thomas stared at the papers, his face pale. He paid me to destroy my future. Yes. He wanted me to hate you. Yes. I was so stupid. Thomas covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. I was so angry and so stupid, and now I've thrown everything away. I let him cry. I didn't come for him, didn't tell him it would be okay, because it wasn't okay, and I wasn't going to lie to him. But I did stay. I sat in my apartment with my son, watching him mourn the choices he'd made, and I wondered if there was any way to fix the damage. Maybe there was. Maybe there wasn't. But one thing was certain. Thomas Sr. was going to pay for what he'd done, and I was going to make sure of it.